Jasmine Carter had just transferred to Cedar Ridge High. She came from a place where strength had once meant gold medals and perfect forms, 8 years of disciplined martial arts under her father's watchful eye. But now, she moved through polished hallways in silence, her wheelchair gliding where her feet once ran. To most of the students at Cedar Ridge, she was just the new girl in the chair. A quiet, black teenager in a school that was 90% white. They didn't see her strength. They didn't see the fighter. They saw someone easy to ignore, or worse, someone easy to target. And in just 2 weeks, they proved exactly how wrong they could be. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. The first time Jasmine rolled through those double doors, it was like walking into a storm dressed in red. Everything about the school felt designed to remind her she didn't belong. A nest of trophy cases lined the walls, glittering symbols of power, of privilege, of physical dominance. Football, cheer, lacrosse. Blonde smiles and Letterman jackets filled every hallway, and Jasmine, with her brown skin, dark eyes, and quiet presence, drew glances like a magnet pulls iron. Not admiration, not curiosity, judgment, disdain, suspicion. A few students whispered as she passed. Others stared too long. Some laughed, but never loud enough to get caught. She'd been warned it might be like this. Her mother, Naya, had tried to be diplomatic. "It's a different kind of place, baby. You'll have to give it time." Her father, Marcus, had been more direct. "They won't see you for who you are until you make them." But no one expected the cruelty to start so fast. By the second week, 3 boys had made themselves known. Blake Thompson, the school's golden boy quarterback with a jawline sculpted by generations of privilege. Chase, the sarcastic follower who always laughed a beat too loud. And Kyle, whose silence made him no less complicit. They leaned on lockers and smirked when she passed. "You think she's faking it?" one of them said on day 4. "Bet she just wants the sympathy card." She didn't respond, not at first. Silence was armor. Stillness was control. Her father had taught her that long before the accident, but silence only encouraged them. They began standing in her way at bottlenecks, pretending not to notice her until she politely asked to pass. Then came the jokes, loud enough for others to hear but quiet enough for administrators to ignore. "Wheels, coming through," Blake would shout, making a show of stepping aside with mock chivalry. Some laughed. Others averted their eyes. No one intervened. What Jasmine didn't know then, what none of them could see, was that something inside her was already shifting. The Jasmine Carter of 6 months ago would have kicked through those insults like dry boards. But this Jasmine had been broken. Twice. First, by the impact of metal and glass on a rainy Georgia road. Second, by the long silence that followed. The months in recovery, the looks of pity, the careful words from doctors who spoke more about limits than potential. Her spine had been fractured, her spirit had not. Still, Cedar Ridge was different, bigger, colder, designed without her in mind. The wheelchair-accessible bathrooms were always on the wrong floor. The teachers barely made eye contact. And the only real friend she'd made was Lena Martinez, another transfer, equally out of place in a world run by athletic legacies and booster club royalty. On the surface, Jasmine was adapting. She learned which ramps weren't too steep, what times to avoid the hallways, how to keep her voice calm when the boys pushed too far. But under the surface, something ancient and familiar was stirring. A quiet discipline born from years of dojo training. Muscle memory, breath control, a fighter's focus. Then came the Friday afternoon in the parking lot. The sky was overcast, the air thick with humidity. Jasmine and Lena were heading to the car when Blake and his friends emerged from behind a truck, laughter already curling off their lips like smoke. There were no teachers around, no parents, no cameras, just three boys with too much confidence and a girl they thought couldn't fight back. "You know," Blake said, gripping the handles of her chair without warning, "I've always wondered what this thing drives like." He yanked the wheelchair out from behind her. Jasmine hit the asphalt hard. Lena screamed. The boys laughed. And Jasmine didn't cry. She didn't scream. She didn't beg. She started to rise. It was slow, deliberate. Her body shook. Her arm was bleeding, but her knees unbent, her back straightened. And for the first time since the crash, she stood. The look on Blake's face changed. Not to guilt, not even to fear, but to confusion. Because in that moment they realized they hadn't broken her at all. They'd only lit the match. And Jasmine Carter? She was about to burn the whole damn playbook. By the third week at Cedar Ridge High, Jasmine Carter had already memorized the layout of the building, not because she wanted to, but because she had no choice. Every route had to be calculated. Elevators that worked only half the time, doorways too narrow for her chair unless angled just right, and ramps with slopes that felt like Olympic trials. Her days were scheduled not around classes or friends, but around accessibility, a word that sounded polite on paper but felt like a punishment in practice. Still, she bore it with quiet determination. Jasmine didn't want pity. She wanted space, peace, maybe even a little dignity. But dignity, it seemed, wasn't something Cedar Ridge had room for, especially not for a girl like her. It began small, most cruelty does, a sideways glance, a whispered joke, a moment too long before someone moved aside. Then, one morning, she rolled into the front foyer just as Blake Thompson and his entourage stepped through the front doors. Blake was laughing at something Chase had said, tossing his keys in the air like he owned the place. Which, in a way, he did. He came from 3 generations of Cedar Ridge graduates. His father was on the booster board. His mother ran the annual gala. His name was written on the weight room's donor plaque. He was varsity football, class president, and prom king material, all wrapped into one tall, blonde, broad-shouldered package of unshakable privilege. As Jasmine maneuvered to pass, Blake stepped sideways, accidentally, of course, right into her path. "Oh, sorry," he said with a grin that didn't touch his eyes. "Didn't see you there, Wheels." The boys chuckled. Jasmine said nothing, steering past without making eye contact, but that wasn't good enough for Blake. "You know," he added, louder now, "they really ought to put backup beepers on those things. Can't be too safe in tight traffic." More laughter, from them, from others. She kept going. That night she barely slept. Her body ached, not from the maneuvering, but from the restraint, the choice to hold it in. Her father's voice echoed in her head. Never strike first. But when they corner you, make sure they regret it. They hadn't cornered her yet. Not quite. The next day, Blake upped the ante. In the cafeteria, while she was scanning for an empty table with Lena, she heard his voice across the room. "Don't worry, we saved you a spot, just kidding. We don't do assigned seating in this town." No teacher intervened, no student protested. Even Lena's hands trembled as she tried to pretend she hadn't heard. Later that week, they started blocking the accessible routes, leaning against door frames just long enough to make her stop, apologize, and ask politely for passage. It was deliberate, precise, designed not just to slow her down, but to humiliate her in front of everyone. And the worst part? They smiled through all of it. They made it look like nothing, like they were just being friendly. Boys being boys. One morning, Chase even dropped his backpack accidentally across the hallway ramp just as the bell rang. Jasmine had to navigate around it as Blake called out, "Careful, wheels. We wouldn't want you to file a lawsuit." She said nothing. Not because she had no words, but because she knew they'd twist anything she said. By now, she'd tried going to Vice Principal Rowland's once. Just once. His response, "I'm sure they didn't mean any harm. It's probably just their way of adjusting to your presence." Adjusting to your presence. That phrase stuck with her, like she was the disruption. She went home that night and trained harder. Marcus, her father, had converted half the garage into a recovery zone. Parallel bars, mats, tension ropes, resistance pulleys. At first, it had been about healing, strengthening, restoring the muscles that doctors said might never fully return. But Jasmine had turned it into something else. Something sharper. She wasn't just rebuilding her body, she was preparing. One Friday afternoon, the boys followed her and Lena out into the parking lot. No teachers, no cameras, just a few students loitering at their cars. Jasmine was halfway into the passenger seat when she heard Blake's voice. "Well, would you look at that? She can move without it. Guess the miracle of modern medicine is real." She turned slowly. He was already reaching for her chair. "Back off," she said, voice even. "Oh, come on," Blake said, laughing. "Let a guy have a little fun." He hopped into the chair and began spinning. "You're going to break it," Lena shouted. "Relax," Chase added. "We're just testing the suspension." They wheeled around her, circling like hyenas. The others filmed it. No one intervened. After 3 minutes of humiliation, Blake finally rolled it 20 feet away and left it there. "Oops," he said. "Guess it doesn't come with remote start." They walked off laughing. Jasmine sat in the car, teeth clenched, fists trembling. She'd never hated anyone before. That was the first time. That night she didn't cry, she stood. In the garage, gripped the bars, and refused to sit back down. "You're pushing too hard," her mother warned. "Not hard enough," Jasmine whispered. The next week, things turned colder. The weather, the boys, the looks. Connor, the quiet one, started to flinch when she made eye contact. Chase avoided her completely when teachers were nearby. But Blake? Blake smiled bigger. One morning, he left a note on her locker, folded, no name. "We're just getting started, thought you should know." Lena found her staring at it. "We need to tell someone." "Who?" Jasmine said. "Rollins? He'll ask what I did to provoke it." That afternoon, in English class, Ms. Daniels saw it happen. Chase dropped his book right in Jasmine's path again. She nearly tripped trying to get around it. "Sorry," he said with that same damn smile. "My bad." Ms. Daniels' lips pressed into a line. After class, she asked Jasmine to stay behind. "You okay?" "I'm fine. You don't look fine. It's just hallway stuff." "That's not just hallway stuff," Miss Daniels said. "It's calculated, controlled, and I've seen it more than once." Jasmine said nothing. She didn't want another adult telling her they'd look into it. But Miss Daniels surprised her. "I'm documenting this," she said quietly. "You don't have to carry this alone." Still, Jasmine knew what would happen. The boys would be warned, maybe told to behave, and then it would get worse, more careful, more cruel. That's how they played the game. The week before Thanksgiving, the unthinkable happened. Blake, during lunch, publicly mocked her rehabilitation exercises. He mimicked the way she gripped the rails in therapy, staggered across the cafeteria like a drunken puppet. People laughed, some looked away, others recorded it. And Jasmine? She smiled. That scared them more than any threat, because they thought they'd broken her, But in truth, she was almost ready for what came next, ready for the moment when the smiles would vanish, and the fear would finally land where it belonged. The Thursday before winter break started like any other, cold, gray, and ordinary. Jasmine Carter had spent most of the school day in quiet focus, counting the minutes until the end of debate club and the slow ride home with Lena. Her body still ached from the previous week's physical therapy, but she'd stopped complaining about the pain. Pain, she'd learned, was a compass. If she felt it, it meant she was still moving forward. That afternoon, the meeting ran long. By the time Jasmine and Lena left the building, the sun had dipped low, casting long shadows across the student parking lot. Only a few cars remained, scattered across the asphalt like forgotten toys. The area felt deserted, peaceful, almost safe. But then they appeared. From behind a large black SUV, 3 silhouettes stepped out. Blake Thompson, Chase, and Kyle. The same trio who had haunted her hallways for weeks now moved with deliberate ease, spreading out to block every exit. They didn't run, they didn't shout, they simply existed, confident, calculated, and unafraid. Predators, cloaked in Letterman jackets and smirks. Lena's fingers gripped her phone. Jasmine's eyes narrowed. "Well, well," Blake said, stepping forward with a tone so calm it chilled the air. "Look who's working late." Jasmine didn't respond. She simply adjusted her wheels, angling toward the car. "Actually," Kyle added, stepping further into their path, "we were hoping for a little conversation." "Nothing to talk about," Jasmine said, voice flat. "I disagree," Blake replied. "See, your little attitude lately, it's starting to rub people the wrong way." Jasmine's heart was thudding now, not from fear, but anticipation. She'd known this moment was coming. She had felt it building, the way storms build in summer. First heat, then pressure, then the thunder. "Keep walking," Lena whispered. "We'll call someone." Too late. Chase had already moved behind them, cutting off the path to the school. Blake took another step, now standing inches from her chair. "Here's what's going to happen," he said. "You're going to get out of that thing, right now." "No." The word hit like a bell strike. Clear, sharp, defiant. Blake blinked, as if the concept of resistance hadn't occurred to him. "I don't think you understand," Kyle said, stepping closer. "You don't get to say no." Jasmine's voice dropped, quiet but deadly. "Don't touch me." But Blake was done listening. Months of unchecked ego, of teachers looking the other way, of a father who could call school board members by their first names. Those had built a boy who believed he was invincible. He grabbed her arm. The force pulled her from the seat. Her body hit the asphalt hard, shoulder first. The cold concrete bit into her bones. Pain exploded through her hip. Behind her, Lena screamed. Jasmine didn't hear the words. Blake laughed as he slid into the wheelchair. "Ah, yeah, now this is luxury." Kyle joined him, snickering as they pushed him in circles. "You ever done wheelies in this thing? Feels like Six Flags?" Chase pulled out his phone. "Oh, man, this is going on Snapchat." Lena tried to get between them, but Kyle stepped in. "Relax," he said, raising both hands in mock innocence. "It's just a bit of fun." Jasmine lay on the ground, her cheek pressed against the cold pavement, blood in her mouth from biting her tongue. Everything slowed. Her vision narrowed, her fists clenched. And then something happened. Not rage, not panic, stillness. A kind of bone-deep clarity that silenced every sound in the parking lot. Jasmine placed her palms flat on the asphalt and pushed, one arm, then the other. Her back screamed in protest, her legs trembled, but she rose. First to her knees, then to her feet, slow, deliberate, like a statue coming to life. The boys didn't notice at first. Then Chase's laughter stopped. Blake. Blake turned and froze. Jasmine was standing. Her hands were bloody, her face bruised, but her back was straight. She took one step, then another. Kyle stumbled backward. Blake's voice cracked. "You've been faking it this whole time." Jasmine's eyes burned like fire. "I haven't been faking anything," she said. "I've been recovering." Her voice wasn't angry. It was final. "Give me my chair back." Blake's smirk returned, but now it was brittle. He stood up, kicked the chair toward the far end of the parking lot, and barked, "Come get it!" Then he lunged, but Jasmine was faster. She stepped sideways, grabbed his arm mid-swing, and used his momentum to spin him off balance. He landed hard, skidding across the concrete. Kyle rushed in next. Jasmine pivoted, planted her feet, and swept his legs with practiced precision. He crashed beside Blake, groaning. Chase hesitated. Just stop," Lena screamed, recording everything now. Blake struggled to his feet, blood dripping from his nose. "You think you're tough?" he spat. "You think this changes anything?" Jasmine stared at him, unmoving. "It changes everything." Blake charged again. This time, she met him head-on. She deflected his grab, twisted under his arm, and delivered a palm strike to his chest that sent him staggering backward. He wheezed, fell, stayed down. Lena rushed forward, arms shaking. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," Jasmine said, wiping blood from her lip. "Get the chair." Students had started emerging from the gym, drawn by the noise. A few had phones out. Miss Daniels was already jogging across the lot. Blake tried to stand again, but stopped when he saw Miss Daniels coming. The expression on her face said everything. "No," he muttered. No, this isn't. This is exactly what it looks like," Jasmine said. Miss Daniels reached them. Her voice was iron. "Everyone to the office. Now." No one argued. That night, Jasmine sat on the living room couch wrapped in a blanket. Her mother knelt at her side, gently cleaning the scrapes on her palms. "You stood," Naya whispered, tears in her voice. "I did." Marcus stood nearby, arms crossed, jaw tight. He hadn't said much since Lena showed them the video. "They'll spin it," he said finally. "They'll say you started it." "Let them try," Jasmine replied. The next day, Principal Whitman called an emergency assembly. He played the footage on the auditorium screen. No one laughed. Blake, Chase, and Kyle were expelled. Vice Principal Rollins was quietly removed from his post. Miss Daniels was promoted. And Jasmine? She walked across the stage, using her chair only when she needed it. The girl they had tried to break had become something they could never touch again. Not because she fought, but because she endured. The video of what happened in the Cedar Ridge High parking lot on that cold December evening spread faster than wildfire in a dry forest. By the next morning, the clip had been shared on group chats, Facebook neighborhood pages, and even landed on a local news station's evening broadcast under the headline, "Disabled Teen Defends Herself Against Alleged Bullies. Video Sparks Outrage." Within hours, the quiet corners of the school were buzzing like a disturbed hive. Whispers turned into murmurs. Students huddled in groups, phones in hand, watching, rewinding, gasping. Teachers exchanged looks in the hallways. And the administrators, those who had so long claimed boys will be boys, now found themselves center stage under a spotlight they couldn't dim. By mid-morning, Principal Whitman canceled fourth period and called for a full school assembly. The tone in his voice left no room for questions. Students filed into the auditorium with the nervous energy of people arriving at church after a scandal. Some looked ashamed. Others were still in disbelief. A few of Blake's closest friends wore the dazed expressions of soldiers who'd lost their captain. On the stage stood Principal Whitman, Vice Principal Rollins, school counselor Miss Peters, and, most importantly, Miss Daniels, the English teacher who had refused to look away. Principal Whitman wasted no time, no anecdotes, no small talk. He spoke into the mic, voice steady but grave. This morning, many of you have seen a video that has shaken our community. What you're about to witness is difficult, but it is also necessary. He gestured to the projection screen behind him. The lights dimmed, and for the next 5 minutes Cedar Ridge watched as Jasmine Carter, a student many had only known as the girl in the wheelchair, rose, literally and figuratively, to confront and defend herself from 3 of the school's most prominent athletes. The footage didn't need commentary. There were no jump cuts or edits, just one long, uninterrupted reality that showed Blake Thompson yanking her from her wheelchair, mocking her, then getting humiliated in return by a girl half his size who had finally had enough. When the lights came back on, you could have heard a pin drop. Principal Whitman cleared his throat. The actions you just witnessed are not only unacceptable, they are criminal. As of this morning, Blake Thompson, Chase Donovan, and Kyle Murray have been expelled from Cedar Ridge High and referred to local law enforcement for assault and harassment. They will not return. Gasps, murmurs. One girl covered her mouth. And let me be clear, he continued, this was not an isolated incident. This was the culmination of months of targeted bullying, of administrative failure, and of a culture that has allowed certain students to feel untouchable. His eyes drifted to Vice Principal Rollins, who shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Then Principal Whitman added the line that would make headlines the next day. Cedar Ridge failed Jasmine Carter. And today we begin making that right. Ms. Daniels stepped forward to a standing ovation from the teachers and many students. She spoke not with anger, but with a quiet authority. I witnessed the bullying, she said. I documented it, I reported it. But my concerns were dismissed. I want every student in this room to know, if you're being harassed, if you're being made to feel invisible, speak. And if no one listens, speak louder. That afternoon, Jasmine's parents were called in for an emergency meeting with the district superintendent. Nia arrived in a crisp navy suit, briefcase in hand. Marcus came straight from work, still in his security uniform. They sat across from a table of officials, people who, up until now, had only seen their daughter as a problem of logistics, a liability of accommodation. But today, they saw her as something else, a catalyst. The superintendent, a middle-aged black woman named Dr. Renee Colburn, extended her hand. Mr. and Mrs. Carter, I want to begin by offering you a sincere apology on behalf of this district. Nia nodded politely. Marcus said nothing. Dr. Colburn continued, We reviewed the complaints, the emails, the disciplinary logs, and frankly, what we found was unacceptable. She turned to Principal Whitman. Would you like to explain? Principal Whitman leaned forward, his voice low. I should have acted sooner. Miss Daniels warned us. So did Jasmine. But Vice Principal Rollins advised against escalating things. He was concerned about damaging the reputations of the boys involved. Nia's jaw clenched. Marcus's hands balled into fists. And what about Jasmine's reputation? Nia asked. What about the damage done to her? No one answered. Dr. Colburn took a breath. As of this moment, Mr. Rollins is on administrative leave pending termination. We've also initiated a full review of our harassment protocols, hired an outside consultant, and plan to create a student-led equity board to oversee future reports. And Jasmine? Marcus asked. She's being offered a full scholarship to the adaptive athletics program at State University, Colburn said. They were impressed by her resilience and her skill. "She's 17, Naya said, softening. "This shouldn't have happened in the first place." "No, it shouldn't," Colburn replied. Back at school, Jasmine returned the next day to something unrecognizable. Not fanfare, not celebration, respect. Teachers smiled at her in the halls. Students who had once looked past her now looked her in the eye. Notes of apology were left in her locker. Some were anonymous, some weren't. Lena walked beside her, as always. "You know," Lena said one morning, "you've become the face of change around here." Jasmine smirked. "I didn't ask to be." "Nope," Lena replied. "But you earned it." In Miss Daniels' class, Jasmine found her seat, near the window, where the sunlight always hit just right. Miss Daniels handed her a stack of letters from students across the country who'd seen the viral video and written to say, "Thank you." One read, "Dear Jasmine, I use a walker. I'm 13. I thought I was weak until I saw you fight back. Now I know I'm not alone. You gave me strength. Emma from Ohio." Jasmine folded the letter carefully and slipped it into her journal. Later that day, a reporter from Channel 7 News arrived to interview her. "Why didn't you press charges?" the woman asked. Jasmine thought for a moment. "Because I didn't need revenge, I needed change." The news segment aired that night and was shared over 2 million times. And yet, beneath the headlines, there were consequences. Blake's father lost his seat on the school board. Chase's family relocated to avoid the press. Kyle's college scholarship was revoked. But Jasmine didn't celebrate their fall. She didn't need to, because this wasn't about them. This was about her. About every student who had ever been dismissed, overlooked, silenced. Now they had a name and a story. That weekend, Jasmine stood in her garage beside her father. The parallel bars gleamed under the light. She hadn't used them in days. Instead, she stood, free and upright, on her own. Marcus placed a hand on her shoulder. "You've done what I never could." "What's that?" she asked. "Changed a system from the inside." Jasmine looked at herself in the mirror, bruises fading, eyes steady. She was no longer the girl in the wheelchair. She was Jasmine Carter, and the world was finally watching. 3 weeks after the parking lot incident, Jasmine Carter walked the halls of Cedar Ridge High with a quiet strength that couldn't be denied. She still used her wheelchair for long distances. Her body was healing after all, but every step she took on her own 2 feet was a message. "I decide when I sit and when I rise." The school had changed, not magically, not overnight, but the shift was there, in the way teachers paid more attention, in the way students watched their words. Where once there had been whispers and laughter, there was now something else. Respect. Some classmates still averted their eyes, not out of cruelty, but guilt. Others greeted her with tentative nods, unsure of what to say but wanting to say something. Jasmine didn't need their apologies. She'd already won the only battle that mattered, the one for her own self-worth. Administrators now enforced a zero-tolerance policy on bullying. Ms. Daniels had been promoted to assistant principal, and a student-led equity committee was launched under her guidance. Jasmine had been offered a place on that committee, but she turned it down. Not out of bitterness, but because she had other plans, bigger ones. The letters kept coming. From across the state, across the country, teenagers, parents, veterans, survivors. All of them thanking her for standing up, not just for herself, but for everyone who'd ever been overlooked, underestimated, or outright ignored. One letter stayed folded in her backpack at all times. It was from a 12-year-old girl in Mississippi who had been harassed at school for using a walker. She wrote, "I used to think my wheelchair made me small. Then I saw your story. Now I know it makes me seen." That line never failed to hit Jasmine in the chest. Opportunities followed. She received outreach from adaptive sports programs, even a scholarship offer from a university that had seen the viral clip. She hadn't made her decision yet. There was still time, but her future was no longer a question mark. It was a path, and she was walking it. One evening, as she stood beside her father in their garage-turned-gym, he looked at her with that mix of pride and awe only a parent could feel. "You change things," he said. Jasmine looked down at her hands, at the muscles she had rebuilt from scratch, at the calluses earned not just through pain, but through purpose. "No," she replied. "We did." And maybe that was the lesson that echoed far beyond the school walls. That strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it rolls quietly through a hallway, endures cruelty with grace, and rises, slowly, steadily, until the world has no choice but to take notice. Have you ever witnessed someone stand up for themselves in a way that changed everything around them? Jasmine's story reminds us that courage doesn't always wear a cape. It sometimes rolls in on wheels. What did you take away from this story? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit that like button if this moved you, and don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories that prove that resilience is stronger than hate. Let's keep the conversation going. You might just inspire someone else.